I'm glad that people have gathered for this very important discussion. I want to start by looking at the question, why is Israel inflicting the horrors that it is inflicting? And the answer is because it can. Because the United States, the world's most powerful country, provides Israel with the arms, most of it for free as unconditional aid, provides it with the diplomatic cover through UN vetoes and pressure on other countries, and provides it with legal protection through attacking and undermining the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice. There is nothing wrong with criticizing Israel, but let's remember that it is the United States that makes it possible for Israel to do what it's doing. And that's why, as an American, I've really been putting my energy in trying to change US policy. And what's striking is that US aid to Israel is actually illegal, not just in terms of international law, but according to US law. It's a direct violation of the 1961 Arms Export Control Act, which prohibits the United States from providing arms to countries which block the distribution of American humanitarian aid. It's a violation of the 1990 Leahy laws, prohibiting U.S. assistance to foreign security force units when there is credible evidence that these units are engaged in gross violations of human rights. It's a violation of Biden's own National Security Memorandum number 20 from earlier this year, which requires that countries receiving U.S. security assistance provide credible and reliable written assurances that they will use such defense articles in accordance with international law, including international humanitarian law. So again, not only is U.S. policy immoral, not only is it facilitating a violation of international law, the U.S. government is violating its own laws. And while we focus on ending the war, ending U.S. support for the war, bringing justice to Palestine, which is all critical, I think it's important to remind people that U.S. policy is not unique. The United States has supported other allies engaged in genocidal wars. Pakistan and Bangladesh in the early 1970s, Guatemala against their indigenous peoples in the 1980s, Indonesia and East Timor, Turkey and Kurdistan, more recently Saudi Arabia and Yemen. And Palestine isn't the only occupation the United States supports. The United States used its veto power multiple times to block sanctions against apartheid South Africa over its occupation of Namibia. The United States was the primary supporter of Indonesia and its brutal occupation of East Timor, in which over 200,000 people, over a third of that island state's population, perished. To this day, the United States supports Morocco's brutal occupation of Western Sahara. In fact, the United States, along with Israel, are the only countries in the world that has formally recognized Morocco's illegal annexation of that country, a full member state of the African Union. So if you want to understand U.S. policy towards Israel and Palestine, the problem is not simply the pro-Israel lobby. The problem is United States imperialism. Now, Biden is not, what gives some hope is that Biden is not only an international outlier among world leaders. Polls show that ever since last fall, large majorities of Americans have supported a permanent ceasefire. Polls also show that most Americans want to end U.S. military aid to Israel. And this kind of pressure has forced Biden to at least pretend he supports a ceasefire when he previously opposed it, though he falsely claims that Israel has accepted it and Hamas is the only obstacle. He has forced him to suspend one shipment of military aid, even though he is allowing other lethal weapons to flow. And it's forced him to promise to suspend all offensive military aid to Israel if they invaded Rafah, though clearly he broke that promise. But the thing is that millions of Americans have taken part in protests against U.S. policy. These are our largest protests in decades. Many are led by American Jews saying, "Not in my name." Over 8,000 Americans have been arrested in these protests. And the changes in U.S. policy are bigger than just the Gaza war. For the first time, millions of Americans, even American Jews, are not just questioning Israeli war making and the Israeli occupation, but questioning Zionism itself. And for the first time, supporting Israel has become a political liability for American politicians. Public opinion is now stronger than the pro-Israel lobby. AIPAC's money cannot overcome millions of Americans concerned about human rights and international law. Now, a lot of politicians don't realize that yet. And a lot of politicians like Biden are just true believers in Israel. These are ideologues. He's not, he's not doing this for political reasons. He's not doing it for political pressure from AIPAC or whatever. He actually believes what he's saying, which is really frightening, but it's true. A lot of older politicians of that generation are like that. And it's hurting his reelection prospects. Indeed, at least as much as questions about his age. And the sad part about that is that it may lead a lot of Arab Americans, Muslims, young people, progressives, other minorities to vote third party or not vote. And that could lead to a Trump victory, which would be even worse, not just for Palestine, but everywhere. But the fact is that there has been a seismic shift in U.S. opinion and U.S. engagement on this issue, especially among young people. In fact, there's probably no issue besides maybe LGBTQ issues where there's such a straight line between youth and age in terms of political opinion. The vast majorities of young people are pro-Palestinian, anti-Zionist, and oppose U.S. support for Israel. And they are going to be the leaders of tomorrow. They are going to be the voters of tomorrow. So we do have hope for change in U.S. policy. The only question is how many people are going to have to die before that takes place.